Just 9 short months ago, the Orlando Magic were the 5 seed in the Eastern Conference and being touted as having one of the strongest and youngest cores in the NBA. Not to mention, Paolo Banchero was fresh off his first All-Star selection after being named Rookie of the Year in 2023. Yet here we are today on February 14th. It's Valentine's Day 2025, and the Orlando Magic are just 27 and 29 after starting out 17 and 9. Now, I have another video coming out in a week or two specifically talking about this Magic team, but in this video there's one underlying problem that I feel like needs a little more recognition, and that's the Paolo Banchero problem. Is Paolo truly one of the most talented rising stars in this league, or is he a chucker that is super inefficient and highly overrated? Today in this video I'm going to try to answer this question. Let's dive right in. So firstly, I want to say that no matter what my take ends up being in this video, it's absolutely okay for you to have a different opinion. And it's also okay if you don't like my use of analytics. It's not for everyone. Paolo started his third year in the NBA off super strongly. Although the Magic went 2-3 in those first 5 games he played in, he averaged 29 points per game, 8.8 rebounds, 5.6 assists, and shot 49.5% from the field. But then he tore his oblique, and it took him a couple months to come back. Finally, on January 10th, he would return, and ever since, it just hasn't been as easy for Paolo as the beginning of the season. Averaging just 20.6 points per game on pretty horrendous efficiency, 40% from the field, and 29% from 3. Now, before we dive deeper into these analytics, I want you to know I am going somewhere with this, but I'm going to contextualize it, and I do understand that this year is a small sample size. So I have a hope for Paolo for the future, but that does not mean we cannot ignore what has happened up until this point in his career. So with that being said, let's take a simple look at the Orlando Magic's on-off net rating this year. Paolo in all 22 games. On the court, the Magic have a minus 6.6 net rating, which is by far the worst out of all of these starters in terms of minutes. And then with him off the court, including the games he's missed, the net rating for the team is a plus 0.9. Now, I know he's missed games. It's not necessarily fair. If we take a look at the 5 games he played in to start the year pre-injury, the numbers are absolutely better for Paolo at plus 7.8 net rating. However, if we take a look at last year's net rating for the Orlando Magic, I think the results will surprise you. So on the court in the 2023-2024 season, with Paolo on it, he was literally second to last in terms of guys that played a lot. He had an even net rating. Meanwhile, you have guys like Jonathan Isaac that had a net rating on the court of plus 10.9, Franz Wagner with a net rating of plus 4.3, and so on. And he led the team in net rating with him off the court at plus 7.6. So I think that shows us a little bit about Paolo's style of play and where there could be some flaws in his game that he needs to correct if he wants to be that rising star. One of the biggest weaknesses in Paolo's game is his reliability on his mid-range shot, but I want to know exactly numbers-wise where this lined up with the rest of the NBA and why his field goal, effective field goal, and true shooting percentages truly were so low. Matter of fact, if you take a look at dunksandthrees.com, you'll see how low they really are. His field goal percentage at the rim is in the 40th percentile, his mid-range field goal percentage in the 37th percentile, his three-point percentage in the 15th percentile. He's just not shooting efficiently whatsoever. But there is this really cool website called centersculture.com that contextualizes a lot of this for us. And so Paolo takes a lot of mid-range field goals per game. Matter of fact, he takes about 6.1 attempts per game, which puts him in the 94th percentile in percentage of total field goals taken from the mid-range. Now, Centers Culture's data is a little different than Dunks and Threes, but for continuity's sake, it says he shoots 45.2% from the mid-range, good for 72nd percentile, definitely above average in the NBA. However, if he's the rising star that everybody says he is and wants him to be, I felt like we should contextualize what type of players are around him in this area. So for example, Brandon Ingram, Kevin Durant, Scottie Barnes, and Pascal Siakam all take a similar amount of mid-range shots that make up a percentage of their total field goals. And if we take a look at someone like Brandon Ingram, he takes 7.6 attempts per game, shoots 46.7% on those. That's 77th percentile. Pascal Siakam, 4.5 attempts per game, so a little less, 46.2%, 75th percentile. Scottie Barnes, 46.9% from the mid-range, 77th percentile. And then, of course, the gold standard, Kevin Durant, 56.1% from the mid-range, 92nd percentile on 8 attempts. So again, Paolo's an above average mid-range shooter. However, if you're going to be reliant on the mid-range like he is, you better be elite. And I don't think you can say, based off these numbers here, that Paolo is an elite mid-range shooter. So with that being said, though, having this in your pocket is a great little tool in your tool belt if you have other aspects of your game on the offensive end that you also excel at. So I was curious, what else does Paolo excel at? It doesn't feel like he shoots well from 3. It doesn't feel like he's getting to the rim like he does, but I want to put numbers behind it. And thankfully, centersculture.com shows us exactly that. So if we take a look at Paolo shooting from 3, it's actually super interesting. So of course, he shoots well below league average at 31.2%, which is not good for a guy that's an above average mid-range scorer. But what's funny is his catch and shoot 3-point percentage is 25.6%. His open 3-point percentage is 29.9%. It's actually his pull-up and his contested 3-point percentages that make up a higher number at 34.8% and 41.7%. So he's hitting tougher threes. If he would just make his open catch and shoot threes, he'd probably shoot 35-36% from 3. So anyway, hopefully he can get to a league average. I think he has to get to league average from 3 if he wants to be the caliber everyone put him in at the end of last year. But that's not what's interesting to me. We kind of knew that about Paolo. What I wanted to know is, how is he doing on any drives, post up, or just in general around the rim? Thankfully, Centers Culture gives us that data as well. As you can see here, Paolo doesn't excel at either of those either. He has a lot of drives per game. He has a lot of rim field goal attempts per game. And that's because his usage is so high and he is shooting a ton, but his percentages are very bad. Matter of fact, his rim field goal percentage is 44.1% in the 27th percentile. His drive field goal percentage, 42.2 in the 30th percentile. And before you get upset with me, it's not just a this year sample size. If we take a look at last year, you'll see what I'm talking about. Similar from 3, he shot it a little better from 3 last year, but with a full season, he played like 80 games. His rim and his drive field goal percentage were very similar. And even in his rookie season, they were also incredibly similar. So as of now, what we know about Paolo is that he's an above average mid-range shooter. He's a below average 3-point shooter, and he's a well below average finisher at the rim. That makes it hard for me to say right now that he is a rising star. Does he have potential? Did we maybe get out of our skis last year with the fact he was leading in points per game? He was the #1 player on that team at such a young age in his second year? Absolutely. Is there time for him to grow and become the player we want him to be? Absolutely. But right now, he's inefficient and he's not the #1 option in that offense. I firmly believe Franz Wagner's that guy. He really is. Now, could you say that Paolo helps draw him off? You could, but I'm gonna show you some stuff at the end here that may make you rethink that. Let's take a look at Franz's Centers Culture data really quickly. So this year, he's not shooting it well from mid-range, but thankfully he only takes 2.8 a game. So who cares, right? But if we take a look at his rim rate, at his rim field goal percentage, he's in the 96th percentile in rim field goal attempts per game, shooting in the 67th percentile at 52%. And then he obviously gets a ton of drives, and his drive field goal percentage is a little bit above average as well. As of now, he is more efficient than Paolo, and it's not just this year. We take a look at last year, he was even better on his drive field goal percentage and his rim field goal percentage last year. So with that being said, Paolo's just not the best offensive player on his team right now, and that's okay. He's 21 years old, or is he 20? He may have turned 22 by now. That's okay, but I don't understand why we can't just admit that Paolo takes too many shots, and they're not good ones. A lot of these mid-range shots just aren't good shots. His clutch numbers are actually surprisingly pretty impressive, and that's where you love the mid-range game, because when the defenses clamp up towards the end of a ball game, you need a guy who can rise up and get his own shot, and I think that's amazing. But I would love to see Paolo use his frame, get to the rim more, and finish stronger. I feel like he settles way too much for bad mid-range shot. And if you are going to be relying on the mid-range as much as he does, and you want to be an all-star, you want to be a superstar, then you got to be elite at it the way Kevin Durant is elite at it. Maybe not as good as KD. He's an all-time great. But if you're going to hang your hat on that, you have to be elite. With that being said, I do think he can get there because Brandon Ingram struggled in very similar ways, and he has steadily increased. Paolo's only in his third year. So while this is a problem, this is not a sentence with a period on it. This is an open-ended thing that he can continually grow at. And then just to back up this problem, we'll take a look at something like Darko, which is another advanced metric. You'll see here the dip that he has had over the past couple of games. And then when you compare it to guys like Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, Franz Wagner, and Pascal Siakam, you'll see Brandon Ingram definitely had a later peak in his career. But the rest of the guys like Scotty Barnes, a little bit ahead of Paolo. Pascal Siakam was ahead of Paolo at this time in number of games. And Franz Wagner, ever since about 50 games ago or so, maybe 30 games ago or so, he's been soaring. Sorry, maybe more like 100 games or so ago. He's been soaring. So I don't think this would be a problem if we at least saw them as equals, or maybe Franz was 1A to Paolo's 1B. But it's very clear Paolo thinks he's the guy. People treat him like the guy, and I just don't think he is. Just a couple more things to kind of demonstrate this. If we take a look at cleaning the glass, Franz is leading the team in win differential, expected wins above replacement, points per possession with him on the floor, effective field goal percentage with him on the floor. Defensively, he's elite. Like, he's far above everyone. And Paolo's having a rough year. Again, just 22 games, but he's way down here. You can see him, which is fine. Again, that's just this year. But even last year, the advanced analytics have never liked Paolo. He's down here by far towards the bottom, and it's because he's a meh defender and he's inefficient on offense. That's what it comes down to. Franz Wagner was third on the team last year. So lastly, this year and last year, and even their rookie season, I took a look at some lineup data, and you can see here for this year in games they both played with Franz and Paolo both on the court, they have a negative 6.49 rating. Paolo on the court, it's staying, and Franz off, it stays about the same. Franz on the court and Paolo off, it's at a plus 29, and with both them on the court, it's minus 16.98. Now, obviously, not many minutes here. They've both been hurt this year. That's fine. So I also took a look at last year, and you'll see it's more the same. Net rating with both of them on the court, plus 1.92. Paolo on, Franz off, it's negative. Franz on and Paolo off, it's plus 12.99. Both of them off, it was 5.37. Plus, if we take a look at dunksandthrees.com, Franz is just a great defender too. He was in the 96th percentile on defense last year. He's in the 90 this year, and he's 94th percentile on offense this year. He's in the 98th percentile in EPM on dunksandthrees.com versus Paolo's always just kind of been, above average. He's above average. He's good. He's really good. Paolo is really good, but I think he needs to prove to us he can be efficient and he can be more dominant, because a lot of his scoring in comparison to Franz's is just highly inefficient, and he doesn't provide the same thing on the defensive end. And so this video isn't meant to bash Paolo. I just think Franz Wagner really deserves more love, and I think Paolo Banchero needs to be challenged a little bit from the standpoint of you're not there yet, and that's okay. You're in your third year. That's okay. There's ups and downs to all of this, but it's going to take him learning how to attack the rim better and more efficiently, dominate at the rim with that size, use his mid-range to his benefit, but maybe cut down, take maybe one attempt less per game, or just cut down on the edges, trim the fat a little bit. I feel like he takes some really bad shots at times, and start hitting your open threes. Paolo absolutely can still be a superstar. I 100% believe that, and I hope you do too. As of right now, if I'm a GM and I had to make a decision, thankfully you don't have to, and I don't want to pit them against each other, but Franz is the better player right now. He's the better player. He is a year older, so I get that, but that doesn't seem to be most people's sentiments. So had to make the video. No shade at all towards Paolo. I'm sorry if you love Paolo. I think he's a good player. He's a great number 2 right now, but he's not. I don't think he's a number 1. I really don't. He can be. Paolo can be awesome. The potential is 100% there. I'm tired of people writing off young players that don't perform well right away, or calling them a bust like Scoot Henderson in his second year in Portland. And so Paolo has a ton of potential left. I really do believe that. But like I said, has to become more efficient. He's got to get to the rim, finish better, work on that, hit your open threes, just become a little bit better, a little bit more efficient. And he has to be, because he's not a plus on. So anyway, that's this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. It's crazy to think the Orlando Magic are one of the worst shooting teams of all time right now from the 3-point line. So I'll make a video on that soon. And don't worry, March Madness videos are coming very soon as well. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you on the hardwood.